Welcome back to the Harmony Ball Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Grant Goldstein Vocal Arrangements. Grant Goldstein has a passion for arranging classic video game themes. His work has been recorded by Newfangled 4 and Cole Kitzmiller. Find his contact details in the show notes. Grant Goldstein is a music educator and a singer in the Westminster Chorus. On this episode, Grant and I get nerdy about music theory and his approach to vocal arranging. Grant breaks down what arranging for barbershop quartet is, and in the second half, we get into some questions of metacognition. Enjoy!
We're chilling, baby.
Yeah, dude. Well, all right. You ready to kick this thing off?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. A 3, a 2, a 1. Grant Goldstein, welcome to the Harmony Ball Podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Mr. Wayne.
Welcome. It's good to hear your voice. It's good to connect with you because a fellow arranger is always so inspiring to talk to. You're a guy who does a lot of putting notes on a page, and I know how much work that is, and it's so cool to talk with somebody who's like into that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to like kind of have a nice talk with another arranger. I don't get to talk too much about arranging. You know, you and I kind of share the up and coming vibes of being the up and coming arranger, and
because we're huge nerds.
Oh, totally. And like sometimes when you talk to people about stuff, they're like, "Man, I like notes on the page." And with you, we can be like, "I like these specific notes and how you treat them and what you do to them."
Yeah, dude, 100%. Yeah, it's exciting. And I listened to your arrangements this morning while I was having my coffee. Listened to the Zelda Shop and the Mario Shop and the
Nice.
We Got a World That Swings. And it was great. And I also listened to some Morton Lauritsen. Is it Lauritsen?
Lauritsen, yeah. He is the I guess if you were like unfamiliar to the choral world and you were based in the barbershop world, right? He would be like the David Wright of like the choral world. Just like the go-to guy. Probably David Wright's like the most well-known barbershop arranger out there. Has his like stuff on so many gold medal choruses. That's like who Morton Lauritsen is. He's like he was like the go-to guy and has the most sold choral octavo ever written. And I think it's the most recorded too. I think it actually passed Handel's Messiah, which is impressive because Handel's Messiah came out like a bajillion years ago.
That is impressive. And for our audience who maybe doesn't really know what an arranger does, would you like to just quickly describe?
Yeah. So as arrangers, we tend to do a lot of things, but like in barbershop, what we do is we usually take a song that already exists in another genre and we arrange it as in like we preserve the melody as much as we can. That depends on the arranger, of course. And we turn it into a barbershop chart. So
By writing notes on the page.
by adding notes, usually 4 voices, especially if we want to be contestable, we're throwing in dominant sevenths and those like ringy chords that we love so much in barbershop. I like to view it as a poetic translation of music. And that if you have like ever read translations of like foreign languages, they tend to be slightly off because there's just certain phrasings that don't work well when you translate it. And we just, instead of keeping the literal translation, which would be like word for word, we have to change the order of the word. We have to change like maybe even the context, you know?
So like there's like 1,000 little choices to be made.
Oh,
And
totally.
A lot of them are like balance choices or difficulty choices.
Yep.
Or how do I accentuate the poetry choices, which are
Or
like
just
the best
straight
choices,
up-
right?
Yeah, and like straight up sound choices too, because like let's be real, there are some songs that really fit in the barbershop world. Like I think things from the earlier times because like and I'm not saying like the oldies are the goodies, but when it comes to barbershop chord structure and the kind of chords that we want, those older songs tend to be more harmonically complex. You know, like stuff from the 60s and 70s, there's a huge jazz influence and blues, and they liked their dominant chords. They liked doing things that were a bit more advanced. Pop music nowadays tends to be really generic. So if you wanted to bring in a pop song into the barbershop world, you have to do a lot of modification to it because the chords don't fit in like a barbershop context, which like I actually have done. I did an arrangement for Masters of Uptown Funk, and boy, did I have to like mess around with it because it's only two chords. Like that's not going to translate well in a barbershop audience.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
it
It's a
it
challenge, right?
yeah,
Big
it's
challenge.
definitely a challenge depending on the kind of song that you're doing. The songs that are a little bit older have they just have more chords that are in common, right? The language, going to the language analogy, it'd be like going from older English to newer English, whereas like uh the some of the more pop songs are like maybe going from like Mandarin to English or like an older French where we don't have a lot of words in common, we don't have a lot of sentence structure in common. You have to change a lot of things. But the goal with an arrangement in general, at least the way I like to think of it, is that you're kind of preserving what made the song. You're preserving the essence of the song, but you're making it work in this other genre, for which for us is barbershop.
Succinct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you get good at that?
Um. So I guess like for me, I fooled around a lot. I did it with there's two methods to me like figuring out my voice as an arranger. One of them was just kind of doing some arrangements for fun. So I took songs that were like songs that I really liked that were kind of catchy and simple. Like one of the first barbershop charts that I ever arranged was for a quartet that I was in for a little bit called Game On. I wrote this chart called Somewhere Out There from An American Tale, Fivefold Goes West.
I love that movie.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
that like little mouse going like somewhere out there beneath a pale moonlight. That whole thing,
And it's
right?
so cute.
It's so cute, and it's actually like a really pretty melody that I wanted to mess around with in barbershop. So that was like one of the first charts I did, and I used that to kind of like mess around and try things. So if you're looking to get into being an arranger boy or an arranger girl or an arranger person, I think advice that I can give to you is just try some things, and if you don't like it, you just delete that part, right? Like
Yeah.
just go ahead, get rid of it. But at least there are some ideas that I've had where I tried it and I wasn't sure I was going to like it, and then I liked it a lot. The other thing I did was I actually analyzed barbershop charts. So I went through, I studied music theory. I am a vocal performance major and a choral vocal music ed major. I did the double major. I had no life in college. And part of our training is that we have to do music theory. And I loved music theory, which is like analyzing chords, harmonic structure, form, and other things. And what I did was I analyzed older charts and some newer charts that I really liked. So from the first hello to the last goodbye, love that chart. Definitely analyze that. I analyzed a
And
couple
when you say
polkats.
analyze, you should say for our listeners who maybe don't have the educational background,
Oh, of
like
course.
what does analyze mean? I mean, I know what it
So
means. So I'm like looking like at like a recipe, and I like open a book, and it's like you put this stuff in the food.
yeah,
But that's kind of not exactly analogous because music is a little bit more abstract than that. Can you talk about how harmonic analysis works to a layperson?
yes. So harmonic analysis means that I'm looking at the four notes and figuring out the chord. That would be like the most basic form of analysis that I'm doing. Is I'm sitting there and I'm looking at each of the four notes that are used and I'm figuring out the chord. And then from there I'm seeing like where the chords go. So I'm looking like, we call this form of analysis vertical analysis because it's vertical. When you look at the sheet music, you go from the top note to the bottom note and you move vertically. That would be columns. You're looking at it vertically. You're looking chord by chord. So a lot of what I did was I was analyzing the chords. It helped me figure out the kinds of chords that we like in barbershop, especially looking at the older stuff, because that's kind of where barbershop evolved, especially those polecats and what we lovingly call polecats volume 2. That kind of like serves as a nice foundation. And it was really that, and seeing how they treated the melody, which, as we know, in barbershop lands in the lead section. So I was looking at, if the lead was on a certain note, I wanted to know how they handled the lead being on that note, how they, how the other three voices interacted with the leads, whether or not they do like duets, where, because sometimes in the charts the tenor has a really nice duet line with the lead, and it's just following it in thirds, or other times the baritone does something with the leads, or other times the lead like holds a note, like in a tag where the lead posts and then the other three parts are just kind of making chords around that one note. So what I did was I would just sit there and I would look chord from chord and I'd be like, how are they moving, or how are they treating these notes? How are they moving from chord to chord? What kind of patterns are we looking for? And I think there's a couple videos that BHS has where they kind of talk about some of this stuff where it comes to chords. They talk about the idea of like traveling like from home base, where home base would be our tonic, and how we kind of come up with some of these chords. So I was kind of looking chord by chord and figuring out, okay, we're on like a C major chord, and then we go to, oh, look, that's a D dominant chord. Wow, that's not really in C major. Okay, but how are they treating that D dominant? The note, the surprise note would be like the F sharp. I'm like, how are they treating that? Where is it going? Oh, it goes to a G7. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's like our expected resolution, so called. And then that goes to back to the C. So it's just looking at these patterns and seeing which patterns they really liked using.
Where does that modal mixture come from in folk music? I've always wondered this. Like how, like, okay, so I'll say this. When you, like an earlier version of myself, if I heard someone who had an education in music theory say that a note doesn't belong, like you're saying F sharp doesn't belong in the key of C, and like to like an earlier version of me, I'd be like, what the heck is he talking about? Like, how does it not belong there?
Oh, I get
And
you.
you know, I wonder, I don't know, this is my hypothesis. I'm sure there's some ethnomusicologists who could answer this question. It's like, why do these modal mixture sounds happen in folk music, and those influence music that we, like, how does that happen? How does it happen? Is it a shape thing? Is it like when I grab on a banjo or a guitar, it just sounds, it's easier to grab? Or is it like these shapes happen in a cappella because they ring better, and or is it because people ostentatiously like chose that we're gonna sing a major 2 here because that's our sound, it sounds cool that way? Or is it like more aggressive over a bar, like in like or a street corner or something, like if the less delicate sounds that are like in the key of C sound less like ear grabbing? Or
Yeah,
how does it all work? I always wondered about this kind of stuff.
that's a good question. I feel like I know that in some cases, like we tended to avoid the tritone. So for, again, kind of like breaking things down, the tritone would be like the augmented, it's either the diminished fifth or the augmented fourth. It happens between the fourth scale degree and the seventh. So if I take like a C major scale how calming. And I were to take the fourth scale degree, which is F, and then put it with the seventh, which is B, you get something that's a little bit dissonant. So I know that in certain cases in folk music, they would tend to change one of those notes to get rid of that tritone feel. So that's where
Oh.
like flat sevens are used a lot, because you get this, you suddenly get this chord, and it's kind of nice. It's also used in jazz too. They call it a turnaround progression. That's when I studied music theory, one of the pianists that worked with our choirs was a jazz pianist. So he taught me a couple jazz terms. So I'm not like a jazz expert, but I'm like, I know a couple jazz words, and it makes me feel really cool. And like that's also like Lydian, where that comes from too. It just like kind of gets rid of some of the tritones. Although, I mean, every scale is going to have like a tritone of some sort. But that's where you get that like happier kind of sound. Just gets rid of some
Oh, the
stuff.
colors. So many
Yeah,
different colors.
it
And then
adds a lot of colors.
marrying them to the poetry. That's the other
Yes.
part of our job, right? Figuring
Yeah,
out
yeah.
how they
Yeah, it
complement the story.
certain songs are like easier to do, and like certain songs are harder. I definitely think the Mario shop and Zelda shop that you brought up, some of the songs in there were really hard because there was no poetry. It was just notes. So I almost had to treat it as like how the songs make me feel and the emotions I wanted to put into those different sections of the medleys. You know? And like that was definitely a challenge, but I love those kinds of challenges. I'm sure you do as well as an arranger, like doing something that's more outside the box, not really what people expect in the world of barbershop. Like no
Yes.
one's
Yes, and I more and more am, to use your words, trying to give myself permission to make more mistakes and
Yeah.
see if it's okay if I can try something that I think is dumb at the onset, and then maybe don't judge it too much,
Yep.
and then come back to it later. And then here's the real awesome part, like mastery part, is like then after it marinates for a while, come back to it and ask like, what was it about that choice that might influence my personal sound or my philosophy of arranging
Ooh.
in the future, to sort of maybe codify an aesthetic to some degree. It doesn't necessarily need to be for like my whole career, or like that's
No, of
what
course,
we
but
attribute to that person or whatever. It can just be for a season or for the next song or for put it away and keep it in your back pocket
yeah,
or
you're
something
getting
like
into
that.
some metacognition over there, my
Oh,
friend.
yeah. Well, this is what I'm talking about because we're huge nerds about this thing. And the
Yep.
farther you go down into making art, the more you wonder about the process of making that art
Yep.
and how you can be. Gosh, it usually comes back to being more gentle on yourself
Yeah.
and asking what the philosophy of your creation is,
Mm-hmm.
but not too much, because that will lead you down a path of analysis rather than a path of like. Because I know I don't know how to describe it. I just know that what's been most productive for me is when I just like, I guess in Lady Gaga's language, just have intercourse with my imagination. Just not
I
think
love that.
about, you know what I mean? Just like not,
Yeah.
this is not a brain thing, really. It's more of a feeling thing. But there are some brainy things that sort of need to be in place before you really have full faculty in terms
Yep.
of using your imagination. So it's such a yin and yang, like two skill sets balancing each other all the time
Yep.
thing. And man, is that an intense practice, because it's good to it's hard to get good at one, but like to get good at both of those things is a lifelong journey for sure.
Yeah. May I elaborate on that?
Oh,
Because I
please do.
think that's an amazing point. I think again, like never be too harsh with yourself. Especially when you're starting out. One of my friends used the analogy that like each time you write something, it's like putting a little piece of paper on a stack. the bigger the stack you have, the better. The stack you have, the better your arrangements will become. No one writes a good first arrangement, like period. That's just not how it works. Your stuff in the future is gonna always be better. You're gonna find more of what you like and what you don't like. So give yourself that freedom to experiment. Like never be mad at your first try, right? Um, and just kind of mess around. I kind of got into it like again, I have to like bring up college, but I took an arranging class. It was just part of my music ed degree because like when you're teaching, you're not always going to have like the desired choir or band or orchestra that a certain arrangement or song can pull off. So sometimes you have to write in the parts, like for this year, I had to write in like we're doing an arrangement of Barbara Ann, and we could only find a 2-part arrangement, and we have like a 3-part choir, so I wrote in the 3rd part myself. So it's a skill that you need to kind of have as an educator. And I remember I had an assignment where I had to write like a high school arrangement of a song of any song that I wanted to, and the nerd in me / cool boy did Lights by Journey. I don't know if you know that song. I feel like you should.
I should, but I don't have that on the top of my head.
Okay,
Lights
it's
by
the
Journey.
When the lights
Oh, that
go
tune.
down
Yeah, of
in the
course.
city, right? Like it's
Oh,
just
yeah, yeah.
like it's so good, but it's like classic rock cheese. But I am not lactose
Oh, the
intolerant when
white
it
people are
comes to
playing
some.
6/8 again.
Yeah, I know, right? It's total cheese too. The
Yeah.
progression's total cheese. I love that song though, and Journey's great.
Oh, yeah,
So
for sure.
I did that song, and I remember like just kind of messing around, having some moments where I did things like it was like SATB, and I had a piano, and there was like one part of the song where I just had the piano drop out and did like a little 4-part a cappella moment in there. And I remember my friends and I, because we were all music majors, we kind of gathered around when we finished our assignments, and we like went over one of our apartments, and we just sight read each other's assignments for fun. Like let's just sight read our SATB stuff because we had the parts. We had a couple sopranos, a couple altos, a couple tenors, a couple basses. Right? We were octet ready, and we were like, oh man, that part's really cool. And then we got to my arrangement and we did that. And like, they were like, whoa, Grant, like, what the heck? That's so pretty. Like, how would you even think of doing that? Like, this is a Journey song. Or like, during the guitar solo, I made the piano play the solo, and then I had us do the chords. And they were like, this sounds so nice. And they kind of egged me on into that, which is why like I think my personal philosophy with arranging is like don't be harsh on yourself, because I had friends that were like really pushing me, and I took that philosophy and pushed myself to be like, let's try more things, because I did things like have a sweet a cappella tenor moment in Lights by Journey. Like who's gonna ever think of that? And I wrote like for my senior recital, I did this 8-part arrangement of I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. And Newfangled 4 did it with Class Ring at a couple performances after, because they loved the chart, and like that's like a near and dear chart to my heart. And like if someone told you that there was going to be this like more advanced 8-part version that was completely a cappella of I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith, you'd probably like chuckle, you know? And in fact, like when I performed at my senior recital, there were some people that giggled because they were like, what is this choice? Like, who would ever think of like Aerosmith? Let's make an a cappella arrangement of Aerosmith, right? But that's kind of where like
But
my
it's not really
style.
Aerosmith, though. It's Diane Warren.
It is Diane Warren. Oh, totally. But it's just like what movie was that for? Was that for
It's
Apocalypse?
from the one where they go to the asteroid because the
Yeah.
asteroid's going to come and Steve
It's
Buscemi's there, I
such.
think.
I think it's again like even more than Lights by Journey. That's some brie cheese. Okay, that is some high quality cheese
Well,
song.
Warren is like Celine Dion's like pen woman, isn't she?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. She's definitely got the
Talking about the
credentials.
cheese. Oh my
Yeah, that is
gosh.
some
Creme de
like
la creme.
yeah, that's some top tier. Like for me, top tier cheese is brie cheese. It's
Oh
just got
yeah.
that like gooey center.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that's what that is for me. And
She's Cal State Northridge alum.
oh,
I'm reading her
nice.
Wikipedia. She also wrote "Because You Loved Me," the Celine Dion tune. You know that one?
Oh yeah, totally cheese,
Oh
totally cheese.
boy,
So
top tier brie.
that's a grade A cheese. You know
Oh
what I'm talking
yes.
about?
Mm. Oh
So
yes.
that kind of cheese, like people laughed. Like it was kind of like a goofy idea, but people also generally loved the arrangement. So my discovery of it were doing kind of arrangements that people would think would be weird and people think would not work, but I loved them and made it work. So like my like two big advice for like, and I've actually told this for people that have like reached out to me and asked for arrangements, which is like super humbling, right? Like I'm not that big of a name, and I've had people reach out to me because of the Mario Shop and Zelda Shop stuff, and I've always told them like look at arrangements that you really like and analyze them, and don't be afraid to like say yes to stuff. Like give yourself that permission to do something weird and to try something new. Because if you don't, what's the worst that can happen, right? The worst that can happen is that you just say no, you scrap the idea. Wow, that's like 2 minutes of your life gone at the most. The best that can happen is that you try something and it's really cool and you think it's dope and it's grade A and you want to hold on to it. And then you do what you just talked about, which is that you start analyzing what it is that you did specifically, and then you bring like takeaways. I think that was like a big part of my growth as an arranger was my looking at some of my early works and when I was being more experimental and taking the things that I liked. And for me, the things that I liked that sounded like my voice as an arranger was being more chromatic, doing things that were kind of funky and weird. So like the Mario Shop one that you listened to. If
Mhm.
this isn't like, go watch Newfangled 4's YouTube and check out Mario Shop and Zelda Shop. The Mario arrangement that I
It
did.
should be that though, because this is a podcast and
Oh,
you're the
totally.
guest, and we should promote your stuff, which is awesome.
100%.
Yeah.
So there is a line, if you didn't know, in the Mario Overworld theme. That's like the last song in the arrangement where it does, the da 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 da.
The
That
Mario theme.
the Mario theme. It's the Mario Overworld theme, as it is called. That repeats twice. So the first time I did a very like traditional barbershoppy arrangement of it. And then the second time I did something where I just decided like this would sound cool. And I just took the bass line and I had it go down in half steps because I'm really in love with half steps. So I started like where that's in the key of C. And what I did is I started at F and I just had it go like and I had it end at like G, and I just had it go all the way down in half steps. And I thought it would sound kind of dumb. Like, I'll be honest, I was like, this is a dumb idea. But then I did it, and I really liked it because I ended up getting like this. And I got like some cool chords in there that sounded like more. Jake, the bass of Newfangled, called it dirty, and I kind of like that. It had this kind of like dirty, like pentatonics kind of vibe of like a little more aggressive. And I found that when I'm experimenting, I like to like do things that are a little more chromatic and weird.
Plus,
Um,
chromaticism feels so nice on the voice because it's so close
oh
physically to where you
yeah,
are. And it's, yeah. Sometimes when I'm writing chromatically on the piano, I just get so frustrated with the temperament on the piano, you know?
totally.
It's just like, I can't hear what I'm trying to hear, but I can't hear it without putting it down on the keyboard and I get frustrated.
Yeah, the lock that you get with real voices really lends itself to doing stuff that's more funky, you know?
Yeah.
Because some of those chromatic choices that you make, especially if you're putting in like chromatic dominant chords, you know, things that are dominant chords, obviously being like our lovely barbershop having that kind of sound, but doing them outside of the key, um, that for me is like a real nice sound in barbershop because there's just a nice lock that happens and it can be really surprising. So I let myself just kind of like have way like doing like a chromatic line in the bass part that goes down like a minor seventh and half steps. That's like uh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 half steps, right? That's a lot of half steps, but I did it for fun and I really liked it and I kept it. So always give yourself that freedom. I think you can never be too kind to yourself as an artist. And we can also talk about this, but like when you look at because I come from this like mixed background, like I love barbershop, but I trained in the choral world, the traditional choral world, I should say. Certain choral composers have like a very distinct style to them. You know, if you want something that's like really simple and elegant and sweet, Morton Lauritsen is your guy. He's got like he doesn't do anything too chromatic. He tends to be we call this diatonic when things are in that major or minor scale, and we're not using like a ton of accidentals. We're just sticking to like whatever the key signature is. It's called diatonic, and Morton Lauritsen writes these really beautiful pieces that are for the most part diatonic. If you want something that's more spicy and more like visceral, Eric Whittiger does an amazing job with like chromatic stackings and really just making these beautiful locking chords. But they have like distinct styles, and I honestly think that applies to barbershop arrangers too. So that's like my third thing, and I think uh, we both kind of agree on this that like different arrangers have different strengths, and those great arrangers in the barbershop world have a very distinct style that makes you want them for that specific style instead of just I want a good arrangement. You're like I want a David Wright arrangement or I want an Aaron Dale arrangement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And that's sometimes something that I have tried to expand just a little bit and say that maybe people have a style for like right now, like what they're in for right now. Because I'll be honest with you, like permanence is kind of a little bit of a thorny bush for me sometimes because like I guess one way to say it is writing music is wonderful, particularly because it's so abstract. It is
Mm-hmm.
so not physical construction, and it doesn't even exist in the world if you believe like this until it's being performed, and it's flexible in that way, and that's one of its strengths. Oddly,
Mm-hmm.
so when we say that a certain arranger has a certain style that you can depend on and go to, I would say also that it's the evolution of that style that's also cool too, and like maybe even another extra cool level of approaching an arranger or getting one of their pieces would be to like maybe even if you had the cojones say I liked what you did here, but it didn't go far enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Could
I
you
mean,
push it even farther?
that's kind of like I mean, we know this from being in barbershop courses ourselves, but like and I've learned this from like having the opportunity to write a couple arrangements for masters in Westminster that like rewrites are totally a thing, you know. The first draft is really ever the one that's accepted and they say like, "Hey, make a couple changes and try this." So it does tend to evolve with like the person that you're writing with because sometimes they point something out and you're like, man, I actually like this change a lot better, you know. But there is a certain value towards like when you have this song that you really want it arranged that you kind of think of different people in barbershop based on the kind of the final product, right? Because I think if you could just take any song and put it in the barbershop style, but different arrangers have different approaches because we're all humans. We all do this process differently, you know? I think that's what separates, like, especially the really successful barbershop arrangers with, like, some of, like, the ones that are, like, selling to a couple people is that, like, and I don't mean this to sound weird. This is just the way I hear it. But I think sometimes certain arrangements that like aren't as great, and this wouldn't be anything like this would be like small time kind of stuff. They tend to almost sound like music theory homework, where like a teacher would be like, write yourself a barbershop chart and put in at least 5 dominant chords, you know, something like that, where it's just like, okay, I put in the chords, but there's not a lot of like personal investment in the song. There's not a lot of like, this is my take on this song in the barbershop style, right? And I think that's what makes like Aaron Dale and David Wright and Cole Kitzmiller and Patrick McAlexander and Theo Hicks listing like big influences when it comes to like myself as an arranger. That's kind of what makes them special. Like when I think if I was like the director of a chorus and I really wanted a chart that was an uptune that was very modern and on the front of barbershop sound. Like it was more modern. It was more hip. It had these really cool like rhythmic moments. I'm going to Aaron Dale, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
That's what Aaron Dale does best.
If Aaron Dale's listening on that, I am kind of still a little bit bummed that we didn't do that flat six gliss to tonic the basis at the end of that uptune.
Oh yeah, totally. Shout out to Aaron Dale if you're listening.
Because
you're
that
the man.
was a great choice.
Yeah.
That I was so excited to sing, but the bass section didn't want to do it right, so we did. No way. I don't know why we took it out. I don't remember. It wasn't my call at all. So I was like,
am I right? But yeah.
But Aaron Dale does push the envelope. How does he do that?
I think it's I know Aaron Dale. I think he's a drummer. I think he does percussion, and he also like kind of listens to that kind of music. Think about like, I mean, we are familiar with some of his stuff because he's arranged for Masters and for Westminster, but he also does his main stuff is Kentucky Vocal Union, and he's done like Michael Jackson songs. He's done like disco songs. He's kind of like embraced this idea of arranging pop for barbershop and making it really rhythmic and adding really cool pretty moments and really cool like aggressive moments. He's just mastered this style. So I like I always think of Aaron Dale when it comes to something that's like cutting and front edge, because that's like the kind of style that he goes for. He does like, we did that Thriller arrangement, remember?
I do.
That was also Aaron Dale.
And I also remember that the section markers were Peanuts characters.
Yeah.
Which was cool. I liked that.
Yeah. And obviously, like Salt Lake City, when we did From Now On, Come Alive, Aaron Dale.
So good.
But he just has this way of, I think the rhythm stuff is because I think he does percussion. So he's really good with just writing these rhythms. And a lot of the arranging that he does is of pop songs or, pop songs of the 70s or even more recent pop songs, right? Or like musical theater that's poppy. Like, let's be real. The Pasek and Paul stuff, it's musical theater, but it's like pop musical theater. It's very catchy. So I think he's just had a lot of experience, like working with that kind of music and knowing how to bring that out. Like I would always go to him if I had that kind of chart. Likewise, if I wanted something that was maybe a bit more simple or elegant, like especially a simple, elegant ballad, like I'm calling up my man David Wright. Because he's done some ballads that are just out of this world kind of gorgeous.
Right, and I think he would attribute that, and I wouldn't put words in his mouth, but I've seen a few interviews with the guy. He would say, I've made all of the mistakes.
Yeah.
Just like a very Thomas Edison sort of thing. Like, I've just made so many mistakes that I know, like, which ones not to make. And that's how I do my thing.
That goes back to what we were talking about. Give yourself permission to make mistakes, right? Because then when you make that mistake and you know that it's like it's not what you like, then you just don't do it, right? A lot of the times we kind of build blinders as arrangers. It helps us kind of focus our work into making a high quality product in like a good amount of time, because like sometimes we have these projects that we can just kind of work on for months, but other times we have to pump out a project in like a few weeks or a week. We have to make magic happen. So you just kind of figure out like as you're experimenting, which is why like the early stage you should definitely experiment, and as he said, make all of the mistakes, and just figure out what you like and don't like, and just remember what you like, remember what you don't like, and then when you make an arrangement, you just do the stuff that you like. As long as it fits the emotion that you want to pick. If you're trying to write something really tender, you're not going to do a bunch of weird chromatic stuff. That would be a little jarring.
And that's what chops are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of Morton Lauritsen. I did this. I was at ACDA, and he did this hour-and-a-half talk. And Morton Lauritsen, he's older. It kind of came off as like your grumpy grandpa, kind of just complaining about life, but it was about music, and it was kind of charming and amazing. And he just kind of ranted in this really adorable way, and I just loved every second of it. And he just ranted about his pieces. He was just like, people want to know, like, why is this piece so pretty? Well, it's just 1, 4, and 5. Any grunge band could play it. And I was like, whoa, okay. Way to kind of demean your own music, but like at the same time, he's not wrong. It's just he knows how to make these really beautiful stackings and make it work.
I do think that a lot of craftspeople sort of get to that stage with their work because they have such tremendous faculty that to them it's nothing.
Yeah.
And there was this, I always think about this moment on that subject whenever I'm faced with an opportunity to speak about my work. And I try to trick myself into not killing the romance somehow, because I've been called on it a few times, And it's so easy to be grumpy, or like, yeah, it's easy. It's just a bunch of 1, 5, 4 chords. Any grunge band can do it. And we fall into that trap a lot because as craftspeople, we're in front of the work so often, then it's just like, it ain't no thing.
Yep.
But other people who are there do not, like, it's hard to empathize with an audience possibly because it's such a rare skill to, I mean, there's really not that many people that arrange music.
Yeah.
And it can be an essential part of doing the speaking about your art artfully, which, not to criticize anyone, I just know that I've made that mistake in the past and been called on it, and then later been like, the lesson here is just let them love it.
Yep.
They can let them do that. Don't interrupt that.
I think this is like, how kind of like the tougher road of being an artist. Because part of growth is critiquing your own process, that's part of getting better as an artist. And I find that with arranging, it's so, like, we like to think of it as it's this creative, you're letting your own voice, you're speaking, like it's your language, you're bringing the music into barbershop life. And yeah, there is a lot of that kind of romantic and personal connection with the arrangement, but there's also a lot of really brainy stuff. Like, you have to sit there and be like, the melody is on this note, how am I going to harmonize it? Now it's on this note, what do I do? Like, you have to think in chord structure, which, like, thinking of chords is not exactly the most romantic thing in the world. It's very technical, it's very logical, and it kind of takes away that the magic that you feel when you're like singing an arrangement, right? So I think that especially when you like get into arranging and you're analyzing your own work as you write it, so that you can see like what you like and what you don't like. That when you're done with the arrangement, like I try and stay excited about whatever I write, but I also know that like when other people hear it and they'll hear it different because they haven't like sat with it for weeks. And every time I get like anyone reaching out to me about that stuff, it always puts a smile on my face. Just it makes me feel like what I'm doing is worth it. Getting that people will send me emails being like, "Hey, dude, that Mario shop was amazing. Keep on doing what you're doing," or like, "Love the Zelda thing" and stuff like that. I get real happy with those.
Yeah,
So,
and you deserve it because it's hard work to make something look that easy.
oh well, thank you. Those projects are like near and dear to my heart because
Because you love video games!
yeah, dude,
Yeah.
I love video games.
Tell me about video
Barbershoppers,
game music and why you love
dude.
it.
Video game music is the best. Okay, I think that video game music is like the perfect breed, the perfect like crossing of film music and more like folky music and pop music. Especially when you look at like Japanese video game music. It is just this beautiful world, whether it's like you're looking at like Devil May Cry where it's like hardcore rock and like metal influence and it's super talk about cheese. That's some real cheese. Or you're looking at like Final Fantasy where it's this gorgeous there's like towns that you just walk in the game and they have these gorgeous folk melodies that are so beautiful. And that's kind of what like got me into really the analyzing of music that we talked about. I started off analyzing like Japanese video game music. Like Final Fantasy was huge. It wasn't a super popular game, but it's called Asura's Wrath. Totally. For those that have played it, they're probably like, "Oh my god, he knows that game!" But like that has some gorgeous music, just lovely tunes, and like Mario, obviously Zelda. Like I grew up playing video games. When I was 4, my mom and dad got my brother and I a Super Nintendo, and I actually still have that Super Nintendo to this day. And I just that's what I did so much was playing video games, and the music just always excited me. And that was one of the things about becoming a music major was being able to like understand why I loved it so much. And then when Newfangled approached me to like arrange for them, originally we were doing like some rock stuff and some other things. If you've heard them do Long As I'm Here With You, that's my chart that I kind of gave them. We talked about this idea of writing video game music because they also love video games. And we were like, why don't we make barbershop video game arrangements? Something that's like not really out there. And I loved it because it was a chance for me to kind of like dive into the tunes that I love, like when I'm pretty much like every tune that has been featured in one of the video game arrangements aren't just like things that I just like looked up and was like, oh yeah, that's a song I can put in. They're also tunes that I heard as a kid when the game came out and I played them, or they were tunes that I played as an adult, when I was playing the modern release of that game, like. And sometimes when we're brainstorming ideas, the game will come out and they'll release a trailer and it'll be like, that's the song. Like when we did Mario Shop, there's a song called Jump Up Superstar in there. And when I played Super Mario Odyssey and that song came on, I was like, this is the most banging chart ever. And I would love to put this into the Mario Shop medley. So,
Do you wonder how music works that way, where like you get transported nostalgically to the place where you fell in love with that melody?
I think for video game music, it's because there's a certain amount of simplicity to it. I don't know if you know this, but like the origin of video game music is in MIDI. It's in like the 8-bit and 16-bit. And part of what made video game music so iconic when it first came around is that there were only 4 sounds that could be processed by a
The
speaker.
microchips.
yeah, by the chips. It was the sine. It was those different waves, that kind of make up what we think of like 8-bit and 16-bit music, where it sounds like MIDI. There's like the square waves, sine waves, triangle waves, and they each have their own kind of distinct sound. They're meant to kind of like imitate instruments, but they don't really sound like instruments at all. And I think that kind of origin for composers must have been really difficult to work with, because it'd be like an artist that could only paint with 4 colors, and you couldn't even mix the colors. You couldn't like take blue and yellow and make green. It was like, nope, you only have red, blue, yellow, and black, and that's it.
And yet, the magic of making art with a lot of constraints is
Yep.
that those constraints yield a lot of easy choices in the onset and great challenge, which is appreciated by an audience.
Yeah, it really focuses you to make like these really catchy melodies that are simply orchestrated, and simply orchestrating meaning the different sounds that they use to accompany it, because you can only use 4. Like you can't do a bunch of you can't do these really pretty tall stacked chords in 18-bit 16 and like 8-bit music. It just doesn't work. So they would do these really fun catchy melodies that worked so well. Even like Zelda would use they would even go as far to like the older Zelda games. You had a recorder that your character could use to like kind of transport you to different places. Obviously, we know of Ocarina of Time and their use of an ocarina as your transportation device and melody playing device, which is ocarina, although it is a more recent instrument, super folky in its sound, almost sounding like a square wave, and just that it's like very plain. But I think that's that kind of like origin of video game music, where it was based off of like you could only have 4 sounds, and you could only make so tall of chords, and you could only have a certain amount of range. That those amount of restrictions to what you could do as an artist helped form this genre that has these really catchy melodies, almost like getting a little classical on you, my friend.
Go
Uh,
there.
Almost like Wagner. It forced them to create these kind of like leitmotifs and other things that you associate, which we now see in like like Final Fantasy 7, in a lot of video games really, but like Final Fantasy 7, like each character has their own theme. There's Tifa's theme, there's Aerith's theme, Cloud's theme, and they're so iconic to the character that when the character is shown and they have their moment, that theme plays.
Oh my God, can I share something and humble brag?
Yes.
So, one thing I learned while in Japan, do you know the story about how Westminster Chorus was approached by this company in Tokyo to do a commercial?
Yeah. I've heard about that. Aren't we like featured on their website or something, like in a picture or whatever? Or
The story goes like this. Way back in, I'm not really sure, I'm going to go with 2012. The chorus was reached out to by whatever marketing organization was representing Suntory Corporation, and they had a marketing office in LA, and the office in LA was like, so we want to figure out how to hire some choral singers to be in this advert that we have designed, and we're going to shoot it in Tokyo, so come audition for this. And it turned out the story was what they really wanted was Mitch Miller. And the office in LA was like, Mitch Miller has been off the air for 60 years, and we don't know what we can offer you other than just casting it. And they were like, okay, cast it. Anyway, long story short, I got the opportunity to go over there, and this is how it connects with leitmotif and theme for character. It is incredible how the train system in Tokyo, every single stop has its own melody. And that melody is the famous character. How do I say this? The the melody plays tribute to the anime that was written by the person who lives in that precinct,
That's amazing.
isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and like I mean, they really ran with the idea of like leitmotifs, but also keeping things in a very folk manner. And obviously, like video game music's one area. Studio Ghibli, I think I'm saying that right. I'm probably
Yeah.
they also do that as well,
Miyazaki.
dude. And that's just some beautiful music too. So, um,
It is, but
you
it's quite lush. It is
yes, it
removed
is
from the
lush.
boundaries of four-part melodic stuff that Kondo gave us. And I love Ghibli's world. Oh my god, it's so visually sumptuous
Mm-hmm.
and epic. Like Princess Mononoke, just so epic. You just like you go to another world completely.
Oh, and
It's
like
like it's
One
so
Summer's
awesome.
Day, like one of my favorite songs that he's done. Um, just so good.
But so
Uh,
lush though.
oh,
Like I couldn't like
totally.
hum you those melodies and be like, I mean,
Yeah,
I like that, but I don't like it quite as much as I like the constraints
yeah.
of the we only have four chips here or four oscillators or whatever it is. So
Well,
one
there's
of
a
them's the
certain
guy's
amount of
feet, so the other two have to be, you're going to have to tell the whole score with just these two dyads,
exactly, and there's a certain amount of like there's a certain amount of creativity that comes in when you're forced to only use a certain voices, or you're forced to only have. And I think that's kind of like with barbershop arranging too, is that especially if you're arranging for a contest, you can only use four voices and you can only use certain stackings. It's the same kind of concept. You're getting rid of some of the colors that you would normally be willing to paint with in order to create a contestable chart. But there's a certain beauty in that restraint. You can find some amazing combinations. With painting, you can find some amazing color combinations that, like, when they're together in a certain pattern, they look gorgeous. Like, that's kind of what makes barbershop arranging so interesting, is that they only have so many tools to work with, because there are chords that aren't contestable. There are chords that don't work, and the fact that these arrangers can kind of like put a strew of chords that work, that sound really awesome and are very engaging, is a talent. It's both a talent and a skill that they have worked on for years. I never want to take away from the practice and the effort that it takes to kind of like find your voice as an arranger. So I'm always amazed by like what they do, and it helps me kind of like drive myself more as an arranger to like get these cool charts. It's part of what I love about being in Westminster and Masters, is that I get to sing Aaron Dale charts, and I get to sing Patrick McAlexander charts and Theo charts, and even that Justin Miller chart. Hello, Justin Miller.
Yeah, you like these charts, and I would add to that another magical part about what we do is that we get to know the people that are making this art.
Yeah.
Like, I, f- I want to underline that as many times as I possibly can, that it is a society and an ecosystem, I guess is maybe even another way of looking at it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that in itself is just gorgeous. It's so beautiful that we have built this support network for the artisans so
I
that
think.
people
My,
can sit down and spend
yep.
their day figuring out how Thriller is going to ring.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite things about the Barbershop Harmony Society, in terms of the members, is just how nice and informal they are. Like, no one,
Yes.
Aaron Dale's not like, oh, who are you? You don't have a gold medal, then you can't talk to me, like, kind of guy. He's like super open and awesome and great. And like,
Right.
um, Cole and Theo are like good buddies of mine. I've met David Zimmerman from Instant Classic. He's hilarious, and
He
same
is
with Kyle.
hilarious.
Cole's a goofy boy. Theo is like hilarious. He was at ACDA with me because he also is in the choral world. He's very much a nerd, and I love him.
Are we talking
And
about Kansas City?
yes, when we were at Kansas,
Remember when we went to go get Good Good?
Yeah.
The barbecue.
Oh, dude, that barbecue was top notch. Kansas City, I know.
Yes, yes. Is that the one you're
Some
talking? Is that
people
the
from like
ACDA you're talking
Texas are
about?
going to be hating, but like Kansas City barbecue is delish. Um, and like Theo was just like so much fun. We like Theo and Jackson and Joey and I um played Smash for like an hour, and we were just like drinking and playing Smash, and like I could never see myself doing that with like people in the traditional choral world, you know? Like they're not as it's not that they like look down on you or anything, not at all, but they're not as informal. They wouldn't be like, let's go play some Smash and like drink some beers and have like a good time, you know? And we did. And it was hilarious and fun. It's actually one of my favorite memories I've had with like a fellow barbershopper was just like, you know, getting to know people like Theo and Cole. And like, to me, they're people that I've looked up to for like various reasons, you know? Cole makes these awesome learning tracks. Theo makes and awesome arrangements. Theo makes these awesome arrangements. They're both in Instant Classic, which is like one of my favorite barbershop quartets. I
They're a
worship
great
some of their
barbershop
charts.
quartet. I think their contribution to the AIC show 2020 was awesome. It
Was
was
that when they did
funny.
that?
There was a prepared segment. There was a live segment. It was
Yeah.
sweet. They did.
Was that
They knocked it out of the park.
was that when they did that Shenandoah medley? I think.
I don't remember what they sang. I just remember
Okay.
thinking Instant Classic did great. This is
Yeah, they're
awesome.
they're amazing, and like, you know, like to they're like larger than life kind of people, and just meeting them and like having a chill time with them was humbling. It was great, and Theo's really amazing. They're all really amazing. I've worked with them a little bit, so at some point, you know, when things are more open, and we're more to normalcy, as we shall say, um, hopefully you'll be able to hear them sing. Maybe you'll hear them sing a chart that's by me. Maybe.
That would be cool.
So they there could be, I you know, like I want to let them kind of like perform it first, but yeah, like that's definitely a thing.
I also really enjoy the temperament of barbershoppers because, yes, they're not as, shall we say, guarded or formal as people who are more versed in tradition, and yet it's still very. It's not without its own etiquette, and that temperament, the barbershopper temperament, is it's pretty American. Like
Yes.
it's very like we're doing our own thing. We have these crazy choices, but they do have a tradition to them,
Hmm.
and I really like that.
It's
I
very
Yeah,
it's very welcoming. I just think that
yes, welcoming and
there's a
hospitable.
certain it's very hospitable. There's a certain amount of informality in barbershop that is probably my favorite thing about it. You know, there's I think that I really like that because I myself am pretty informal, you know. Um like even though I am like a teacher and whatever, it I tend to be more informal. I like to goof around. I love Check It Out by Dr. Steve Brule and some other Tim and Eric awesome show, great job kind of things that are just hilarious. And
To
there's a
me, you know the difference between like being childish and being childlike.
yes,
And I really appreciate that about your character because
thank you.
it's so warm to work with someone creatively that knows where that is for them,
Hmm.
and then they can model that to others, and it's infectious. It's a essential teaching skill for sure because children or young people, young adults, anybody who's learning something, they are constantly running this do I really trust this person thing, and
Yep.
goofiness and being in touch with whatever it is that allows you to sort of peek over the borders of things but not go over them and know where those lines of professionalism are but not to be so staunch that you're like inaccessible is like a delicate dance.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, I feel like you got that. It's a good on you, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of that is because of I was kind of like the brainy kid growing up. I don't know if that's a surprise to you, but I was like the kid that didn't really study and still got like A's on tests. So a lot of people just didn't like me. Um, I hate to like put the cat out of the bag, you know, like I remember in middle school I took like a science class and like I didn't really study. I didn't do that much homework. Funny now that I'm a teacher and I'm just like fully admitting that. But I was in that class and we did the test where it was graded on a curve. So whoever got the highest score got 100 and then everyone else was graded based off of that curve. And I always broke the curve and got like, because I would get like a 98% and then suddenly that was the 100. So, you know, if the highest score is like in 80%, then people who got like 70s or 60s get a huge benefit because instead of their test being out of 100, it's out of 80. You know what I mean? But I would get like a 98 or like a 96 and I wouldn't study. And then boom, it was like people hated me. So I always had this kind of like aura that was inapproachable because people thought I was weird and that I was like pretentious for being like smart or whatever. So, and I was also like bullied a lot as a kid. So to me, I kind of learned this like way of being informal so that I could make friends so that people wouldn't be intimidated by me because I actually like get told that I'm intimidated. That I'm intimidating. Sorry, not
That
intimidated.
they're intimidated.
Yeah, that they're intimidated by me, which I always find kind of weird because like I'm kind of goofy, you know, especially now. I have like a certain amount of goofiness and silliness to my nature, but people are still intimidated by me. You know, like I've had when I student taught and I was working with high school, and I think like when I still like work with high school sometimes, the students will tell me that my head voice is intimidating. You know, like things like that. So I think it's important, especially when you work with the younger generation of students, especially in the arts, right? Like this is like for VAPA, visual arts and performing arts. It's really important that you encourage them to also be open with that kind of side of them. I think that's what Justin Miller does so well as a director and why I really admire him is that he also kind of rides that line and shows us that it's okay to kind of express ourselves. And he gives us that permission. There's a certain amount, and I've had parents actually tell me that too, which is like, you know, don't want to humble brag, but like it's just a very nice compliment. There's a certain amount of leading that you have to do from the front instead of from above. You can't just tell your students like, be emotional, be open, let yourself really get into it, right? Because they don't know how to do
You
that.
can, but it probably won't succeed.
Yeah, you'll just look weird. And like especially if you're like telling them that, but then you're up in front of them like you're really strict and professional and your conducting gesture is just very to the T of what the song is. You're not like getting you're not putting in like any sort of emotional impact into your gesture. You're just kind of looking at them and you're like, you need more energy, you need to sing with more emotion. Like they don't respond to that. You need to give them that permission. And the best way to give them that permission is just to behave in a way that allows for it. You know, to be encouraging, to let them be a little goofy. That kind of encouragement really helps. And I think it especially helps for those of you that have to work with the younger boys. Because girls tend to be more emotionally mature and they tend to the big thing with them is just getting them more confident, you know. And I'm generalizing, so I apologize, but with the way
You could back
boys,
up and say what you've found successful in your experience.
yeah,
You're speaking your truth. It's okay.
this is like my truth.
Yeah.
You find that like boys in general, and this is more common like when I was a kid, it's becoming less common now as people are becoming more educated with kind of like the older gender norms, is that boys are kind of taught to be bottled up emotionally, right? that's like how they were. They had a harder time handling emotions. So I find that uh, when I'm working with some of these students, being able to just kind of like be more goofy with them. At first, they're like super uncomfortable because they're like, whoa, that's a man showing a lot of emotions and that's a man being open and vulnerable. But they start wanting to do that too. You know, they need to see someone do that. They need role models that do that. I've actually had a like when we had concerts. You know, think about like back in the day when we had concerts before we were stuck in quarantine for forever. There were actually a couple parents that told me that like they admired the way that like I behaved with the students because it encouraged their kids to also kind of break out of their shell for that reason.
Sounds pretty healthy to me.
Yeah, exactly. So you just hope. And I think I hope to someday like live up to any sort of like positive feedback that I get. I think as artists, we're always kind of in this eternal struggle of needing to improve and needing to be better and needing to work. So moments like those are really touching. You know, that's that's the stuff that kind of like sticks to you. Besides like goofy memories of playing Smash with Theo and Jackson and the others, but it's just those moments where someone just says something that kind of catches you off guard in a really nice way. That that like kind of just motivate you to continue working and that you're doing the right thing. You
That
know,
sounds like a successful approach. Let me ask you this: how can we incorporate that successful approach, or that approach that you've found to be successful in modeling empathy, into our barbershop harmony society more fully?
I think so. That's a really good question. Ooh,
Thank you.
and you're just hitting with like the bangers over here. So I think that it starts with the individual, and I hate to like be that guy, um, but
Well, we're Americans. Individualism is baked into the whole thing.
yeah,
Personal responsibility.
yeah. I think it is because I guess this is just speaking from my experience. You have to be the one that shows them how to do it, and you show them how to do it by example. You can't really teach emotional empathy. At least I haven't figured out how to do that. Maybe someone has, and they could like blow my mind with that ability. But I think the best way to do it is to just kind of be that person that you want in the barbershop harmony society. You know, be that person that's willing to be more emotionally vulnerable and willing to make connections with people and willing to just like talk to people, you know, especially at all of those youth festivals for barbershop. Like, go there and be open, be vulnerable, get to know them. They're the students of today are our future and they're amazing. So go get to know them and reach out to them. They're very excited. They love this art too. And like, let's just be real. Like, this is going to be total circle, but I'm down for this circle. Um, the youth of today, like, some of them might not know barbershop, but they know Newfangled 4, you know? So
Yes.
they're paying attention. Like, Newfangled 4 is barbershop. They're there paying attention. They love this kind of stuff. And part of what makes Newfangled 4 like so appealing to the younger ones is because there are these four guys that, I mean, they may be on the young side, but they're still very mature, but they know how to like they're willing to be like emotionally vulnerable and be kind of goofy and fun, and that's what kind of makes them so appealing.
Yeah, Newfangled Four's appeal and how to describe it and encourage that style of yeah, they're it's hard, I can't really see the forest for the trees just because like those are my friends, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You're their friend and you
Yes.
work with them closely and so it can be very hard to like really like imagine. You probably experienced this more than I ever have, where it's like you talk with a young music student and they're like, do you know about this barbershop quartet called Newfangled Four, because they're my favorite? And I am I'm so proud of those guys for what they've contributed, and I'm glad that they're going to keep doing it. Yeah, they're going
Yeah.
to keep doing it. And they, what is it about those guys? They're not really sticky as they could be for a quartet that leans on their comedy. They're
Hmm.
more like accessible because they don't have any like walls up. Like it's very in the service of the audience, their
Yep.
act, and I really like that about them.
Yeah, they really connect with the audience that they're with. I mean, that's why they're so popular on shows. They always made that connection. And they are doing stuff. We can talk more about it towards like the end of the podcast when I like plug the crap out of them cuz I
Plug
love
them.
them.
Go for it.
Um okay, I'll plug them right now. Plug them right now. So
Yeah.
as you know, um Ryan left the Newfangled 4. He was just kind
Drama.
of go
No?
Yeah,
Oh.
huh?
Go on.
So he's now living in Texas, and he just needed to get like some stuff straight, and he's living in Texas and living his best life, and they wish him the best. It was very much on good terms, you know. Um, but they still want to do like YouTube stuff, and they may branch out and do more things, but they want to do the YouTubes. This kind of like started in quarantine where we did like Mario Shop and then we did Zelda Shop. Um, the we want to do more video game medleys. You know, I may or may not be working on a video game medley, like that I'm gonna give to them soon. Maybe. So but like we want to turn this into a series. They want to do more stuff. They want to stay active. They very much want to be involved. So if you would like them to stay active, which I think we all should want that, what you got to do is you got to subscribe to their YouTube channel. I mean, come on, man. That's the most obvious thing to do. You got to go on YouTube and you got to subscribe.
Right. And then after they subscribe, what they should do is buy the arrangements and then put them on TikTok.
Yes, they should go. They should subscribe because like
Learn the
uh,
arrangements, sing it into
a
TikTok.
lot of their views are like on the Barbershop Harmony Society, and they also have their own channel. So what you gotta do is you gotta go to the Newfangled 4 channel. You know, it's the youtube.com/user/ less than charming. But I think if you just type in Newfangled 4 into YouTube, you'll find it. They have hilarious, amazing things that you'll love. And so you have to subscribe. You got to hit that bell, duh. And for me personally, a selfish plea from me is that you got to watch Mario Shop, the Mario Bros. Medley and the Zelda medley if you haven't. And if you have, you might as well just watch it again. See if you can pick up some super hidden Easter eggs that are in there. Because I'm a clever boy and love video games, and I got to throw in my Easter eggs for my fellow gamers in the audience. And you have to like the videos because that will be nice for the YouTubes. YouTube likes it when you like the videos. They want to share
So
it
do
more.
it. Do it now. Dude, that's the business. Can we close with a little bit more, shall we say, far out open thinking?
Yeah, dude.
Can you tell me about your interpretation of the Emily Dickinson line, "Water is taught by thirst"?
Ooh, ooh. Okay, so water is taught by thirst. The idea, at least like the way I see it, is that you don't like know how important something is until you're missing it. You know, until you really need it, right? Because water doesn't have any taste to it. It's whatever, but like after you do like an intense run or something and you've sweat a lot, like boy does water sound amazing. So I think it's that like the missing of something in your life like really teaches you about how important it can be, and it really gives you value towards that. So that's the way I would see it, is that there's a certain amount of value that you get from not being able to see something all the time. Like, boy, do I miss in-person rehearsals with Westminster. Like, I
Yeah.
miss those boys, you know?
Yeah.
And it was something that, like, I know personally I would kind of take for granted because, like, it can be kind of a drive, and I would just be like, okay, here I am, stuck in traffic, heading over there. Um, and like there were days where I just didn't feel as up for it, but did it anyway. But like I am so excited to have a rehearsal in person again someday. Like I'm uh, sitting at the edge of my seat waiting for that moment to arrive. So there's just there's a certain value that you never realize it. Like when you're just doing it every week, you just kind of like take it for granted and you still enjoy it. But like man, I will be like kissing the ground when we rehearse, you know?
So in that way, this has been a little bit of a blessing if we choose to look at it optimistically.
Oh yeah. I think as as sucky as quarantine has been in
Oh
a
boy,
lot of
has it
ways,
sucked.
I think there's a silver lining in everything. And I think for me, it was definitely a moment for me to kind of like get in tune with my body and with myself and think about what I would like and what I need to do in order to make some changes that are better for me. And it's also been an opportunity for me to like try out new things, like the Mario shop and Zelda shop were things that happened in quarantine. It's I don't think we would have ever. We always kind of like tossed around this idea of doing video game medleys, but they were they were always so busy that we just never had the chance because they just keep themselves busy. And when quarantine happened, we all had like a bunch of free time at the start of it, so we were just like, hey, let's just throw it out there in the world and see what happens.
You
So
did it! You did it! Yeah,
yeah, it
that's
feels good.
awesome, man.
So
It was so cool to watch those this morning again and just be like, yeah, this is a lot. This is a lot of work, and they took they took it. They took that opportunity.
yeah, it took like the Mario one took like each of them took like almost like a month or 2 months because it's just the work that you have to do on the front hand of picking the songs that work, and then the work that you have to do of like, does this key work for them? How do I make it work? How do I bring these melodies into the barbershop world? How do I put my own spin on it so that way it's something really fun and interesting? And some of the references, like in the Mario Shop one, there's a little moment with Ryan where he gets to do like one of the video game sound effects that's written into his part. Um,
Isn't that great writing a part for somebody you know is going to really enjoy it?
yeah, it's just like little nuggets that you're like, oh, I didn't realize that. Or like the Zelda medley. Towards the end, there is a song. If you have not seen it, I do feature a song from Breath of the Wild. And for those that are unfamiliar with Zelda music, or they would not know this, but Zelda music is very much instrumental and orchestral and does not have words to it very often. And I featured a song that had multiple verses with words. And I got those words from the game of Breath of the
Oh,
Wild.
really?
Yes, that was my super big Easter egg moment. Is that I wanted to put in words. I always like putting in at least one song with words. Whenever I do a medley of these, I try and make it something where I can find at least one song where I can put in some words, so it's not all like do's and bops. And I pulled those words from a side quest that features the character that plays that theme. A little. So if you have not played Breath of the Wild, or if you are playing Breath of the Wild and you're like, what? I didn't know that, then I guess you have to play more of it and figure out that side quest that I got those lyrics from. And towards the end of it, I did throw in one of the songs of the ocarina, because I did one medley that is just that song, Zelda's Lullaby, one of my favorite songs out there. But towards the end of the song that's from Breath of the Wild, right before the tag, I threw in one of the ocarina songs that you learn in Ocarina of Time. Or that one actually might be from yeah, no, I think it's in Ocarina of Time. It's definitely also in Majora's Mask. So just a little, give you a little extra nuggets to search up there. So yeah,
And it's the little details that really show off your love for video game music and the culture and the cross pollination, shall we say, of barbershop music, a cappella music, and the larger video game audience, which is ginormous. And
yeah.
good on you for bringing those people into barbershop with your art form.
Well, barbershop is a lot of things, and I think as limiting in some ways as barbershop can be, I think there's a lot more to barbershop than people give it credit for. There's like Westminster doing From Now On and Come Alive from a very recent musical, The Greatest Showman. Uh, Obviously the Thriller thing that we talked about. Like, there's a lot more to barbershop than people usually think of. You're wearing the hat, you're a Dapper Dan boy, you've got your little bow tie, you got your little hat, you got your little vest with the stripes on it, and you're here to sing some of the old classics. But it's really evolved and become an art form that can be applicable and has a little something for everyone. So if video
Yeah.
games are your things, like, you gotta check that stuff out. And then, of course, if you want to reach out to me at all, you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook, whichever is your preferred method of that kind of stuff. But I do have an Instagram. It's GT Goldstein. I have a Facebook. If you just look up Grant Goldstein, you'll find me. I'm that guy. And I do have an email, an arranger email, super special arranger email. So if you would like to reach out to me about getting an arrangement, or even if you have like some questions about arranging and stuff, you can just reach out to me using ggace.store at gmail.com. ggace.
Well, real good. Everybody, I'll link those into the show notes and you'll be able to find Grant and his work. And thanks so much for coming on the show today, buddy. It's been really pleasure to talk with you about all this super cool, nerdy stuff.
Yeah, dude. Feel free to have me on anytime. I will nerd out with you any day, anytime, as long as I'm free. So
Oh,
this
yeah.
was
Oh, and then there's one more thing. When we get back together in real world, what tag should we sing?
oh
Yeah, your pick.
my pick.
Your
Okay.
pick.
Um, the one of my favorite tags, and I'm just gonna be like real up front. My favorite tag is "Seasons May Die."
Seasons may die. It's on.
It's such a ooh. It's got 9 chords, and I have a weak spot for a good 9 chord. You got your root, your third, your fifth, and then you've got that 9 in there. Ooh, it hits. When you sing that opening "Seasons May Die," that always hits my heart. Like, that tune's real well. It's just a little plucking of the heartstring right there. So "Seasons May Die" is one of my favorite tags out there.
Sweet dude. Well, we are gonna make beautiful, sweet nine chords real soon. Coming up here at the Midwinter Convention, Pasadena, 2022. I'm so sure.
Yes, and we are. I think there might be some rehearsals in the fall or winter. Who knows? Someday. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Universities are starting to open back up. Where the county that I'm in is like approaching yellow tier, which is really nice. So it's making it's just becoming easier for us to kind of do the choir work that needs to be done. So I'm really excited, and I'm happy that we're making those steps forward so that we can. Because I miss me some tags. I don't
Right,
know about
exactly.
you.
You're happy and excited because you love what you do. Because you chose to be a teacher who teaches what you love. Way to
Yeah,
go.
it's something that's both rewarding and it can also be very frustrating, but it has It definitely is rewarding, and it is fun to work with the students. So, it can just also be frustrating, but I love what I do, and I'm sure most people that teach music also love what they do as well. So shout out, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, so shout out to those teachers, shout out to those music teachers and choir teachers. Y'all rock.
Right on, man. What do you think? Should we wrap this up?
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
feeling good. We've like gone on for a bit. I don't want to overwhelm them, if
Yeah,
you want
we'll
to.
keep this open for when you come back on the podcast next season.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm totally down to come
After
back for the next season. We can.
after the next release of newfangled charts and so on.
Yeah, there should be more coming. Like just keep your eyes out. There should. I don't want to, I don't want to spoil anything because I'm not a spoiled boy over here. I'm not that spoiled apple. I am a good ripe apple, and
Dig it.
so I won't say anything. But I can tell you that I am working on stuff that could be for them. So, and we do want to release more stuff. It's just like we're reaching a point where, as things are starting to open up again, they're getting busy with like life things, and I'm also getting busy too. Being a teacher, we're gearing up for the end of the year concert, so that also takes up my time as well.
Nice, dude. Well, we're all looking out for those. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Mr. Grant Goldstein.
No problem, Derek. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing your face and talking to you again.
Heck yes. Can't wait to get back together and sing tags with my friends. I'd like to thank my guest, Grant Goldstein. And I'd like to thank you for listening. Until next time, this is Derek Wayne saying, keep the dream